What about Bitcoin's comparison to other current cryptocurrencies? So Bitcoin versus Ethereum, for example. Why is it possible that Ethereum overtakes Bitcoin?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. Ethereum leadership is sort of wise enough to understand that they shouldn't compete with Bitcoin on those most profound qualities. Like Ethereum doesn't really aspire to be more sound from a monetary perspective than Bitcoin, right? In fact, the Ethereum leadership are sort of constantly tweaking the monetary policy. So they went for a completely different trade-off, right? They also don't compete to be as decentralized from a governance perspective, right? Because there's leadership. There's
Hmm.
an ETH foundation. There's a charismatic leader, Vitalik, and Ethereum has this policy of hard forks. So in Bitcoin, hard forks are extremely rare. In Ethereum, it's the default way to change things. So it's a much more adaptive system and it changes more frequently. But that also means that it's sort of they're incurring more risk when they introduce those changes. There's much more complexity. So Ethereum is smart because they sort of understood Bitcoin as the top dog when it comes to a sound money, a digital gold type thing. And they went for all of the different trade offs. They wanted to be more of a platform. They wanted to have more complexity at the transactional layer. They wanted to take on more risk in terms of changing the protocol. They wanted to change more quickly. They wanted to make the monetary policy more mutable. So Ethereum takes that completely different tack. Of course, I'm not ruling out that it could take over Bitcoin from a market cap perspective. It's just a very different system. And I tend to think that Bitcoin is the most disruptive one because it's the most equipped to challenge sovereign currencies in the grand scheme.
Do you think they can coexist? So, like in the future, do you see a world where Ethereum captures some large percent of the market, and but nevertheless the minority?
100%, 100%. Bitcoin has already been tokenized and put onto Ethereum. Many units of Bitcoin, I think over $1 billion worth. So not only do they coexist, they are actually mutualistic. So they're like two creatures that have this, it's like the rhino and like the bird that pecks the parasites off the rhino's back or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know which is which in the analogy, but
Yeah, I don't know who the parasites are, but yeah,
so, or, the alligator and the teeth cleaning fish or whatever. Right.
right.
So, I always wonder why the alligator doesn't just eat the fish, but I guess they're brushing its teeth basically. So, um, Ethereum it gives you more transactional flexibility. There's much more experimentation happening there. It has this whole decentralized finance element. There's a huge number of Bitcoins that circulate on the Ethereum protocol, right? Because Ethereum is open to other asset types, basically. So I think that's actually accretive to both systems because Ethereum gets to have this good form of collateral, Bitcoin, on the system, which has good volatility characteristics. And then it's a supply sink for Bitcoins, which are sort of now they're injected into this third party protocol. And that I think reduces the velocity of Bitcoin overall. And it's probably good for the valuation.
So you see, it quite possibly could be a symbiotic relationship. That's really interesting.
I think so. I think so.
What are your thoughts about Vitalik Buterin? What are your thoughts about some of the other figures in the space outside of Bitcoin?
I think Vitalik made some mistakes with Ethereum. Ultimately, like I disagree with some of the decisions that were made along the way. Like there's this infamous case of this bailout where 14% of Ether was lost in the smart contract, or really this smart contract that a lot of Ethereum leadership were sort of backing and supporting was hacked. And then the foundation with Vitalik's support chose to make a change to the underlying protocol to undo the hack, right? So to me, that was not the most prudent approach because you're basically violating the core protocol rules in order to undo, to bail out a specific contract which has failed. Granted, there was a lot of Ether in there, but I think that shook the credibility of the Ethereum system. It happened back in 2016, I think. That was one reason why I became disenchanted with Ethereum.
So basically, even if in that case that might fix an important problem, that opens the door to centralized manipulation of the protocol in the future.
Yeah, it basically demonstrates that there's certain elites at the protocol level that can exercise specific control over the system. And, a lot of people have lost money in hacks on Ethereum, and a lot of contracts have gone south, huge amount of value. But they didn't get a bailout. And it was just when, this specific contract called the DAO, DAO, was hacked that, the leadership intervened. And, to their credit, they haven't had a significant intervention or bailout since then. But it did normalize the practice. And I think it weakened the social contract. So I would prefer that you sort of bite the bullet in that situation and you accept the failure of that contract.
That would be a ballsy move to bite that bullet.
Yeah. I mean, and then you would have had like what they thought was a malicious entity in control of a lot of coins. I think the real reason they sort of felt that they had to undo it was because they'd always planned to move to this proof of stake world where your political control over the system is a function of your wealth in the system. And they didn't want this attacker, which would have inherited all this significant wealth, to have influence over that future proof of stake version. That's sort of my theory.